Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Central bank governorship is not an easy job in the best of times. And when one has to contend with an unheard of demonetization, set up an institution like the Monetary Policy Committee for the first time in a complex economy like India, manage a banking system that has accumulated over the years 10 trillion rupees of bad loans, and do all this in a highly uncertain global environment. Clearly, even surviving 2 years is an achievement. But how has Governor Urjit Patel fared in this very tough examination? And what are his challenges ahead? I have with me a panel of experts today to kind of grade the governor, may I say. Well, I have with me Behram Vakil, Managing Partner, AZB and Partners. I also have A.K. Bhattacharya, Senior Editor at the Business Standard. And in a bit, we are going to be joined by Ratun Roy, Director at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. He's also a part-time member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much, Behram and AKB, for joining me. Let me come to you, AKB, first. Monetary policy, setting up the committee and navigating its first steps. How do you think Governor Patel has managed that?
Well, you know, before I answer this specific question of yours, let me say that to assess Urjit Patel is a difficult task because he unfortunately suffers a kind of an Amjad Khan syndrome in reverse. You know, Amjad Khan played his most brilliant role in Sholay, and whatever acting, whatever performances he had shown in other films, people had always referred to him as a Sholay man. And unfortunately for Dr. Patel, the demonetization thing was such that whatever wonderful things he has done in the remaining tenure of his 3-year tenure, I sense that demonetization will always be talked about, and Urjit Patel will be identified with demonetization. So that's the unfortunate part. But on the Monetary Policy Committee thing, I think, and both inflation targeting as well as the Monetary Policy Committee thing, it was his committee that had recommended the entire structure of it. And I must say that right from the first policy that he undertook as a governor, he has stuck to the blueprint that was created by the government on the basis of the committee that he had headed. And so far, I would say that he has done quite well. His team has done quite well. The only thing I would say is probably we need some more disclosure on the minutes of the meeting in terms of how each and every member actually shared their views at those meetings. Right now, what we see is as a kind of a summary, but maybe at some point we would like to see the kind of the Fed Reserve kind of a minutes of the meeting which are so detailed, and that will probably help in introducing greater transparency into the process. I guess that's welcome advice which the government and the governor will take. You know, I'm also a veteran of covering as a reporter at least 100 policies. AKB, and I can tell you that what I found very distinct and very good in the Indian MPC tradition has been the tradition of naming each person with the comment he makes. It may have its downside because people may, you know, want to protect what they said before and be worried that this will be held against them. But it's a new institution, it's a new practice. Most other countries just give you the minutes and don't tell you who said what. So to that extent, I thought the governor has set up a brave new tradition. It's worked well so far. Let's see how history will pronounce upon it. But I personally think that's a contribution that India and Urjit Patel has made to monetary policy minutes. I'll come back to monetary policy making and to the currency as well, the core economics part. But I think we should not be looking at demonetization. We discussed it enough in the first year. In the second year, I think, for me personally, the most brilliant career by any central banker is the contribution that Urjit Patel has made to the cleaning up of the banking system. Behram, you know, this is something you're personally involved in professionally as well. How would you rate the way in which this very tough task has been taken by the governor?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lata. So, I don't think I'm in a position to rate, but I can just say that it has been a fantastic experience, and I can't agree with you more. Right from day one, which was, if I remember right, the SR case in Gujarat, to the most recent decision in Allahabad, which was so crucial for IBC as it goes forward. I personally never expected, of course, DG Vishwanathan and his team have been terrific and they are very hands-on. But I never expected to have the governor so hands-on and the communication to be so brisk and forthright. So he has been terrific from IBC standpoint. And, as the last case, as I say, where the odds were heavily stacked against us with all the players, but extremely strong, and it was a fantastic experience.
Okay, I'll tell you what my fear was when the ordinance was passed and the act amended, that RBI will give specific directions that specific cases be taken to the NCLT. My big fear was that cases could come against the RBI and the government using equality under the law clause, Article 14. But the Reserve Bank's filters in terms of just saying the top 12 and, using absolutely neutral filters, do you think that has kind of won the day? And they have not been found wanting in terms of the fairness with which they have approached the cases. Behram, you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it was well thought through. As you say, there were three perfect filters which have been challenged in court after court, and they have stood the test of time because they were extremely fair and had a good rationale behind them.
Your thoughts, AKB, on the cleanup process, first identifying people and sending, and then the FEP12 circular?
The most admirable thing about the entire exercise is that he held the RBI and the RBI governor held their ground after every step they took, including the February 12, 2018 notification. I think the central bank firmly adhered to what it needed to do. And I think it did not really succumb to any pressure, whether discrete or direct or indirect, or even in the face of a court process where the government of India had given an affidavit for a special dispensation for the power sector. And I think the RBI stood its ground, and I think that's the admirable stance to have taken. And I think it will be hold for the sector, for the economy in good stead for times to come.
No, you're absolutely right, and I don't know if that we can already say that that battle has been won. There is still a high-level committee which is going into the power assets, but clearly the governor and under his charge, the deputy governors have held their ground. Behram, when the February circular first came, there was a lot of worry and perhaps concern on the part of the bankers that this one-day default may create mayhem. Now people tell me actually it's good because everybody reports on the day of default to the CRILIC, and so we know, oh, this guy is a defaulter with that bank, and therefore the SMA1, SMA2 cases have also reduced. So people are not complaining so much about one-day default. Do you think all the heckles raised by the FEP12 circular have been answered? Do you think now there will be fewer challenges to that circular?
I think so. Also because, the time, as you know, as the 6 months has run on the 28th. And I just want to reiterate, exactly what was just said, that you can't have different rules for different sectors. If we had, Allahabad had gone against RBI, you would have had a queue outside the door. Yeah. Rightfully so, in my personal opinion. So it was really crucial to stand so firm and so courageous against all odds.
Yep. To be fair, of course, the judiciary has also stood by the RBI, both Allahabad Court and the Supreme Court so far, though some might argue that it has stretched the timetable. We have to very quickly come to the currency issue as well. Your thoughts, AKB, do you think Governor's biggest challenge actually may be his third year? The currency and bond yields are proving to be a big challenge. What's your sense? Will he coast through? Because he's a rich man, $425 billion of reserves.
Yeah, but the question is whether that will be enough. You know, something that he achieved with great relative ease and little flourish is the manner in which the RBI under his charge redeemed the $26 billion FCNRB swaps, you know.
Yeah.
Now, in 2013, to counter the pressure on India's rupee, I think the RBI governor then had got into the $26 billion FCNRB swaps.
Yes.
Now, they came up for redemption in 2016 in October, November.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, little thought is given to that, the manner in which those were redeemed, and the planning was done in advance by which the redemption happened without much trouble or disruption to the market. So I don't put it beyond Urjit Patel that he would also this time plan his actions in a way and his processes that the challenges, they are going to be formidable. Let us not make any mistake about it, because whether the trade war gets into a currency war and then there is a pressure on your currency, even $428 billion of reserves may be a good defense to have, but we need to really walk the real tightrope, and he will need the government on his side here.
Oh yes, no two ways about that. But I guess the government will oblige fiscal discipline, perhaps, and the way in which they handle fuel prices. Well, what would you say is the biggest challenge ahead, Behram, for the third year?
Well, the conversation you just had is above my pay grade. But so if the only addition to that is the number all of you know very well, is that I think in a way it's a little dangerous to keep giving the CAD in a percentage of GDP. It's 88 billion. That's a daunting figure. And that, the BOP gap shouldn't slip too much. Otherwise, it'll get really dangerous. But I think I'll move back to IBC. I think the challenge is that we stay the course. The judiciary continues to give it the fantastic priority that it has given it, and the capacity building, because otherwise the NCLT and NCLAT, we can't have a choke at the top. So having just one appellate tribunal, I think very soon they're going to have to figure out a way to have a second and ideally a third. Same with the NCLTs, we should have ideally 20. They've just had 3 more. So I think these are the two big things. But otherwise, I'm very proud to say that India is the spot for the distress funds, and if we maintain course, we will receive the capital that we need so crucially.
Okay. Gentlemen, I have to take a break and thank you. I like the way in which Behram says the question is above his pay grade. These doubts never come to journalists. So I'm going to go ahead and make as many editorial comments as I want to. But thank you very much, AKB and Behram, for joining us. We take a short break, and I hope by then Ratin Roy is ready to join us to give us his take on Urjit Patel's 2 years as RBI governor. Governor Urjit Patel completes 2 years in office, and we have been speaking with a panel of experts to check out what they have made of what has been a fairly tough 2 years in office. Started with demonetization, and then you had setting up of the Monetary Policy Committee for the first time in India's history, and then cleaning up a banking system which had accumulated almost 10 trillion rupees of bad loans over the past several years, and insolvency code that had just been put in, and therefore that was being tested. And now, as he completes 2 years, challenges from the global currency markets as well. Joining me now to give his opinion on how Governor Patel has navigated through all these troubled waters is Ratin Roy, the director of the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, also part-time member, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Dr. Roy, thank you very much for joining me. Well, first up, monetary policy. Do you think fairly successful in establishing the institution and keeping to the given inflation target? How would you rate his performance?
I think as the governor's job, the institution of the Monetary Policy Committee depends on a number of things other than the governor. So we have to examine whether the governor's role in the development of that committee has been, how good that has been. I think it's been very good in three ways. One, the Monetary Policy Committee now is established as an institutional process where every time a Monetary Policy Committee report comes out, there's a discussion not just about why interest rates are kept on hold or not, but also about the overall inflation credit situation in the country. Two, the governor has reasonably successfully managed to make sure that the opinions expressed by the Monetary Policy Committee are largely consensual and demonstrably free, and that's very important in India, from external influence. That's a difficult job in India, much more difficult than other places. Third, the governor himself, in his comments, has shown exemplary professional and technical leadership in making the case for his views within the committee on the direction which the policy instruments at his disposal should take to be able to control inflation and manage credit. So I think that's the best one could expect from any governor over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And considering that in any case, this committee itself was the brainchild of the Urjit Patel report on inflation targeting. Dr. Roy, can there be a charge that in the process of taking inflation targeting as the main task of the Reserve Bank, probably less attention was paid to the current account deficit, and the trade deficit has snaked up, threatening to become a slightly ugly current account deficit? Would that be a charge against the RBI and the governor?
I don't think so. I do not see the RBI as the guardian of India's structural balance of payments crisis, right?
Okay.
The Reserve Bank of India is the central bank, and its job is to manage the consequences of a structural RBI given the overall policy parameters which are set by the Government of India. And the overall policy parameters that are set by the Government of India are that we will have a managed capital account, and that the RBI will use its resources at its disposal, it's basically its stock of reserves, to monitor the markets and make sure that as the exchange rate finds its level, whatever that might be, based on supply and demand for currency, that results in an orderly and predictable movement in the exchange rate. Now, it stands to reason that in a country which has structurally imports more than it exports, the price of the rupee will depreciate. So the job of the RBI is to make sure that that depreciation is orderly. And on that count, I think the RBI has done a pretty good job. Depreciations have, the worst thing that can happen if you're expecting the rupee to depreciate is for it to appreciate, right?
Yeah.
And there's been only one episode when that has happened, and that was quickly curbed. So I think in terms of managing the rupee's trajectory in an orderly fashion and keeping volatility minimal and making sure that we do not have shorting of the sort we saw in the Subbarao years, this governor has done an excellent job.
Okay, fine. Maybe some more challenges lie ahead. We are still in the midst of a global economy that's challenging emerging market currencies. So this will, of course, be a challenge that will have to be faced in the third year in office as well. But the banking NPAs, how would you rate the way in which the Reserve Bank under Dr. Patel has taken that on?
Well, the division of labor seems to me that the government of India makes policy on how to handle the NPAs and how to therefore restructure the banks, obviously speaking with the RBI. And the RBI manages the ground rules under which NPAs are found and how banks should deal with the mechanics of NPAs once they are identified. And there I think the Reserve Bank has been fairly clear on what the ground rules are for NPAs to be identified and what banks must do once they are identified in terms of, sort of cushioning these with capital cover, etc. Because that is the division of labor. It is not, in my judgment, the case in India that the central bank as the banking supervisor and regulator, makes policy on how to deal with the structural problem of bank NPAs. It might act as an advisor to government, but that call lies with the Ministry of Finance. And that is the institution you need to judge, if one were to judge, you know, how well or badly bank NPA has been dealt with. But that's not the subject of this conversation. So in that case, I think the RBI has done its job. The job assigned to it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of opposition when a circular was issued in February, which tightened the recognition considerably. I mean, recognition of NPA was still, or classification was still 90 days, but you had to report on day one of the default, and immediately bankers had to get together and restructure the rate of upgrading a restructured loan, or the bar was set very high. So people were a little taken aback by the ferocity of those rules. On hindsight, the banking system appears to have adjusted to it, although it has belched out a lot of NPLs. How would you say, I mean, the RBI has handled the February 12th circular? Are you in agreement with the main points of that circular?
You answered the question. I think the governor and the RBI have more expertise than I do on, you know, number of days and that sort of thing. But if the circular worked, then it worked, and it did. We were in a situation where even 3 years ago, we had NPAs that existed in ample measure, and we had no idea what these were. Governor Rajan put into place a mechanism for identifying them, and unfortunately the problem did not stabilize, right?
Yes.
Therefore, it became essential to ensure, particularly after certain spectacular defaults and people fleeing the country and that sort of thing, that there was concrete demonstrable action taken to assure public confidence when NPAs were found. The screams that came from Bombay were possibly that these were too harsh and these would somehow damage the banking system, but that has not happened. And if you're talking about these restricting or inhibiting people from lending, yes. When your banking system is riddled with bad assets, lending will be curtailed.
Okay. Yeah, that point is taken. But no, well, one of the criticisms would be that you have lined up too many cases too soon in front of the NCLT.
Well, if there are cases that have to be put to the NCA, and if the problem is of the magnitude that people consensually seem to think is large, then there will be a large number of cases towards the NCA. I don't understand too many.
Okay.
One can't ration these things.
No.
One has to take them in the magnitude that they occur.
Okay.
Yeah?
Well, no, it's just that then the waiting time gets large, and even the first batch of 12 cases, only 2 have been completely resolved and the checks have been paid out. So, you know, one of the complaints against the circular was that while NCLT is an excellent institution, already the waiting line is big, and the February circular is pushing more. Anyway, I guess at the moment, that's the only way it can be resolved.
Then you need to ramp up the NCLT.
Yes.
That's hardly the governor's fault.
No.
His job is to bring these issues to the attention of the NCLT, which is what he has done. He cannot then be blamed for the fact that the machinery to deal with such cases is not adequate to the task. That's a collective responsibility. We all have to work to making sure it ramps up.
Okay. No, that's exactly the point Behram Vakil was making before you joined us in this chat. Dr. Roy, what would you say are the future challenges in the third year?
Oh, that's for the governor to decide. Thank God I'm not the governor.
No, but what are the very patent challenges in front of the central bank?
Well, the central bank has the challenge that we have to continue to watch the volatility of the exchange rate very, very carefully. Given instructions from government regarding where we would like to see the rupee go, and those instructions, no doubt, I'm sure, will take into account the indubitable fact that economics demands that the rupee must appreciate. The central bank's challenge will continue to be to manage that depreciation, I beg your pardon, depreciate, in an orderly way.
Yeah.
The second would be to make sure that the monetary policy remains reasonably on target, flexibly on target, in a way that does not inhibit growth unless it actually means that the parameters of the inflation target are broken. To improve the quality and functioning of the Monetary Policy Committee further, so that its pronouncements become rather more, how do I put it, coherent than I believe has been the case, and I've written about this in public, it's no secret. And fourth, to examine the question of the RBI's fiscal obligations to the government, and there, you didn't ask me that question. I think that a more relaxed view ought to be taken, or less parochial view, if I can stick my neck out, could be taken by the RBI with respect to both the dividend it pays the government of India and the reserves that it holds for a banking crisis. But then that's just me.
Yeah, but the discussion of the reserves will perhaps take another half hour, and I'm running out of time on the show. Let me just ask you this. Do you think it will become more tough because the government is going into polls, and therefore they may find the third year, Urjit Patel may find it even more taxing because the government will want more money?
No, I am absolutely confident that this government will not deviate from the path of fiscal rectitude.
Okay.
Because it's an election year. For the very simple reason, I think everyone in government understands that there's very little payback to be gained at this stage of proceedings from expanding government spending. What government has committed to spend, it will spend, and if the budgetary numbers are right, that will not result in a drop in fiscal rectitude. So the RBI, I think, have no fears on that score, and I'm sure Governor Patel doesn't.
Oh, right. Oh, that's good to hear. I'm sure Dr. Patel himself will be very glad to hear of your assessment. And since you're sitting in Delhi, you're more likely to know the correct view of what the government is thinking. Would you want to grade the governor? How much would you give him for the 2 years?
I would not presume to grade the governor.
Right.
He's both a senior economist and a friend.
Okay.
But I would say he's done a job that I find most satisfactory.
Okay. Well, actually, the previous two speakers also thought that they shouldn't be given this onerous job. But thank you very much, Ratin Roy, for joining us and taking us through how you see the governor's performance on several issues like the Monetary Policy Committee, the management of the external account and the banking system. I'm now joined by another veteran watcher of the Indian financial sector. In fact, he was, almost the penumbra, the core of the Indian financial sector. Hemendra Kothari, the chairman of DSP, BlackRock Investment Managers, joins us. Of course, now there has been a change in the name with a split coming in. Mr. Kothari, thank you very much for joining us all the way from the United States. It was very important for us to get your view. I assume you know Urjit Patel personally as well. How would you rate 2 years of Urjit Patel as central bank governor, RBI governor?
I think Urjit has done pretty well in this kind of uncertainties which are going and also in local domestic financial sector and various banking reforms. He came, demonetization took place, banking bankruptcy code with various things which are going in, particularly in foreign exchange. What we are seeing it emerging market, Argentina, Turkey, and other countries going through the problems. And within that, I think India looks, emerging market actually stands out with our growth. And at the same time, I would say rupee dollar, which he has fully managed with interest rate also at the same time. I think there is no panicky which has been created in India. So that is a very important aspect of the whole. He focused on macro aspect, and I think he's giving his view that how we can look at the macro so that various other aspects can be controlled. So I think he has, in a short time, in 2 years' time, he faced a lot of problems and like particularly the bankruptcy side and the bank problems, and which he's been handling it very well actually and very calmly and firmly.
No, actually, that was going to be my next and last question because we're running out of time. He was seen as taking a very tough stance on the NPA problem. Do you think we are over the hump, and how would you rate the way he handled it?
I think he has handled it very firmly, very calmly, and I think he doesn't, he expresses his view, but at the same time is very calmly managing it. So I think I would give him a good score. I won't say what percentage and all that, but I think we did, after particularly Mr. Raghuram, who Dr. Raghuram was very well-known economists globally.
Yeah.
And Urjit coming in over there was many people a surprise to many people, but he has done quite well. I think we have to say that in a tough time, he is doing well.
Oh, absolutely.
And that
tough
creates
time.
a confidence to a lot of investor time.
Yes.
Investors are having a lot of confidence on that.
Okay, and there you are in the United States, perhaps talking to investors. So the certificate comes from someone who is very close to investors and is saying that he has won the confidence of foreign investors. Thank you very much, Hemendra Kothari, for joining us. We have completely run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on this special show on Governor Urjit Patel completing 2 years in office.